Rosemarie, 8 million a month, it's an awful lot of money. Can that be the amount of the extent of the problem in Northern Ireland?
Unfortunately, Rowan, it is. And I have to say that Newry and Moore will be one of the high areas with debt. There's a lot of deprivation in this area. Outside of Belfast and Derry, Newry would have one of the highest unemployment figures. We have the most carers, in a society, and we would have a lot of debt. Unfortunately, day and daily people come to us. Often they've had debt for a long time and they've been trying to manage the debt, and then bang, they can't do it any longer and they've got to come and seek help, and quite often for them at that point in time it might be too far gone for them. But what we will do in Citizens Advice, we can't pull rabbits out of the hat, but we can negotiate on their behalf and work on their behalf and get them back on the straight and narrow and try and find a solution to the problem of the debt that they do have.
Most reasonable creditors, they want it sorted out. They'll accept reasonableness.
Well, yes, they will accept reasonableness, but quite often, and I find this difficult, I suppose, at times, you know what I mean, we're a charity and we struggle to keep the doors open ourselves, and constantly if you look in the TV, or if you pick up a credit card letter and say, if you're in difficulty, contact your local Citizens Advice. So they would prefer to negotiate with us as opposed to negotiate with the client, because they know then the client is in getting something sorted, and the chances are that whatever negotiation, whatever we can come up with, formula, an agreement with the credit card company or whatever debtor or creditor that the client's in, that will be adhered to much easier than someone who will maybe down the phone agree to pay £20 a week and then breaks it on the second week. That's the unfortunate.
People are empowered in some way to take the longer view and to put down on paper and to take it as a personal crusade, if you like, to sort this out.
Yes.
5 years goes very quickly.
5 years goes very quickly, and what we are finding is we got some money through for rural help, actually, through DARD project, and what that is, I have a girl in the office who's trained to go out and do money matters with groups of people, and that's really interesting, because that will help people take a look at, can I change my car insurance company? How do I do it? How do I negotiate the best electricity payment, etc., etc.? And you wouldn't believe what can come out of that. And yes, you're right. Once you start putting things down on paper, it makes sense to people, and they then will work with you in trying to get this debt
Rosemarie,
cleared.
have we a new poor coming into you?
Oh yes. Most definitely. At the beginning of the recession, I would have said we would have very much people who would have been in benefits or propelled into benefits very quickly. And believe it or not, people on benefits actually have had to manage it very little for a long period of time. So they actually can be quite good at managing the money. But you take a couple who've been out working and they're taking home between them anything from £800 to £1,000 a week, which is possible. Yeah, that can happen. All of a sudden, one of them loses their jobs. They've got a big mortgage. They've got car payments. The car company doesn't want the car back.
No.
They want the payments for the car. Maybe there's credit card debt. Maybe they've taken out a personal loan for Christmas. You just don't know. And we would find also too, the working poor, there really are people who maybe have lost from a 35, 40 hour a week down to a 20 hour week. They can't afford not to work, but often they can't afford to work.
Yeah.
And that's difficult for people, and trying to manage, and they've had easier access to credit cards and easier access to personal loans, so therefore they quite often continue doing that and max themselves out before they actually can come in and talk to us.
This sounds to me the kind of thing that drives individuals close to the very edge of sanity.
Yeah. I've had to have all my staff trained on suicide awareness. Everybody's trained in suicide awareness and Citizens Advice. We have to be very quickly able to identify someone who's maybe on the edge and very quickly move and work with other organisations within Newry and Moore, like PIPS, for example, to assist these people, because they're hiding it for a long time. They're not sleeping. They're not eating. Maybe there's relationship problems because they're fighting at home over the debt. You would be surprised at it's like a pebble in a pool, and the ripple effect of debt has on families. Right down to the young child in the family, where they see mum and dad splitting up quite often over it, or whether they've had to maybe resort to medication. And it is difficult. And they can go into the doctors and get the tablet. But it doesn't resolve the emotional end of it and the difficult end of trying to get this sorted out.
Not only are you the thin end of the wedge, but it seems to me you are fundamentally the only end of the wedge of the government's intervention. If you like to think you're a quango, a charity, you're there, and the government is using you as a stopgap, so to speak, to keep the problem at bay. Should government be facing up and doing more?
Well, one of the things I really would like government to do is, and I think the beginning to take a wee look at it in Stormont, it's what you call financial capability. It's whereby people like ourselves are being trained up to sit down on a one-to-one, basically for a few sessions with people and help them budget. Simple things like budgeting. That's not done quite often in schools. You leave school, you're a student, you get a job, you've never had to worry about budgeting. And if government would actually put some money into the prevention rather than the cure, I think we could have a wee bit more of that.
And is there an irresponsibility still on behalf of credit card companies and payday loan people who are fundamentally giving people whatever they want?
Well, I would say the credit card companies are much more easier. You know, they have guidelines and they're bound by the guidelines. So they're, you know, you can work with them, and if it goes wrong, you can report to the omnibus man. Now, I would have more concern about payday loans and doorstep lenders. Now, and
doorstep lenders are people who will come and knock on the door to give the money,
Newry,
but then threateningly and frighteningly will come and knock on the door to get the money paid back. Are people experiencing that?
Oh yeah, most definitely. And the sad thing about it is quite often the people who use payday loans and doorstep lending, they cannot get credit anywhere else. So if something happens within a family, for example, maybe somebody takes sick or the car breaks down and they don't have any reserves, well, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the payday loan, or they're going to go to the lender because maybe they've no other recourse to funding. So they're going to go there. And then the difficulty of that is if they can't pay it back. And even if they are paying it back, you know, they're paying it back a very high percentage. You know, that's another. The Argos Cards, another big thing that's been used a lot.
What's an Argos card?
An Argos card is where you can buy, you know, you get a card and that you can go into Argos and you can buy, you have so much that you can buy and then you've got to pay it off. And people are going in, it's easy access. They're going in and getting maybe the iPhone or iPads or whatever else, and then they're paying it off and they're finding it very, very difficult. Catalogue debt and store card debt has actually risen quite a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's buy now, pay later.
Yeah. I think it's important perhaps for us to say and make clear that Argos are doing nothing wrong.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely
but it's people mismanaging the opportunity.
It's like a catalogue.
Yeah.
They're not doing nothing wrong. They're in business and it's very clearly there. They state their terms and conditions. But unfortunately, people get caught into the trap of the buy now, pay later. And maybe the pay later comes into difficulties then when they can't pay. And obviously then the credit card or the company wants their money back as well.
Ultimately, will the company always get the money back? Or does the philosophy of no feathers on a frog apply at any stage?
Well, outside of Belfast, Southdown has the highest amount of bankruptcies in Northern Ireland. And the highest amount.
So if you've got property, you lose the property.
Yeah.
But if you're in a rented accommodation as a person who owes a lot of money, then there's very little they can do to you but put you to prison. Or would they do that?
Well, I don't know of anybody who's been put to prison.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. To anyone worried out there now, to say it right down the lens, that we don't know anyone who has been put to prison for the debt that they owe.
No.
It's important to say that.
It's important that, and people shouldn't feel afraid to come forward. Like, we're confidential. It doesn't matter if you come in with £500 worth of debt or £55,000 worth of debt or 250,000. We've seen it all and we've heard it all, and it doesn't matter because the pain and annoyance that you're feeling right now, whether it's small debt or large debt, is your feelings, and we are not there to judge you. Absolutely not. And what we say to people, the first thing we say to people who we're trained, the staff and reception staff, anybody comes in with that, they're seen immediately. They, at least their details are taken and they get a call within 24 hours from us. They never go out the door thinking, well, I can't get to talk to somebody. Whereas I know other people, there's always queues for us, like particularly on a Monday, and people have to wait. There might be a few days before they get seen. But debt clients are seen very quickly because quite often it's taken a lot of courage to come and talk about the debt and to open up. But as I say, we're not there to judge, we're there to help as best we
And
can.
would people with larger debt come to you?
Oh yes, we would have business debt as much as we would have small amounts of
And
debt.
is that a business person coming to you and saying, help me, manage this for me, what am I to do?
Well, quite often they're not. The first thing a lot of them will say is, I want to go bankrupt. I want to just be bankrupt. They don't know all about bankruptcy. So the first thing we do is sit them down and we'll have a look at what are the issues, what is the debt, where can we go, can we come up with a different solution for them. If they have to go down the route of a debt relief order or bankruptcy, we will take them through that step by step. So they're never left on their own to deal with that. If that's the route they have to take, we'll guide them. But you would be surprised that they don't actually have to take that route. And whenever they discuss it all out, because they'll hear the word, oh, if I go bankrupt, then that's me okay for a year. But they don't know the consequences of it. But sitting down and talking it through with someone, actually, well, it's the old saying, isn't it, Rowan? Knowledge is power.
Oh, it is.
And the more knowledge you have, the better
and
the decision.
And a little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we all hear the armchair solicitors who tell us what we should or should not do, and that's fair enough. But come and talk to someone who has the experience. My debt advisors are trained in debt advice. They're experienced debt advisors. They know what they're talking about. They deal with it day and daily, and they will get a solution for you.
So, optimism or not, as we sit in mid-February 2014, are you optimistic? Can you be optimistic?
Well, I have to be optimistic.
Oh, you have to be, but realistically,
yes.
What are you facing and what are they?
Well, I think the difficulties that we're facing coming down the line is welfare reform. That's going to be a real big change for people. That's going to have a big impact.
Tighten people even further.
Yes, and it's going to make things very, very difficult.
What does that mean? Remind people what that means, welfare reform.
Welfare reform, it actually hasn't gone through Stormont yet, but welfare reform is a decision not made by Stormont, might I add. It's been made by Westminster.
And it's already been made across the water.
Yes, and we have we're colleagues in Citizens Advice in the UK. We're constantly in communication with them, and you do see some of the headlines from national news stories. It is having a problem, difficulty for people. So welfare reform will come in, I would imagine, in some shape or form into Northern Ireland. We have to be ready for that, because it means people could see a drop in some case of £20 a week in their home. £20 a week for someone who's in a low income is a lot of money. And it'll tighten people even further, and we'd expect to see some debt. Optimism, yes, in the sense I think people are beginning to, they're not as quick to jump into debt. They're beginning to look at things, maybe going back to the old days of where my mother and father, you never got anything unless you could afford to buy it, and you had to save for it. And you're beginning to see people begin, as I say, we do a wee bit of a course within the rural communities on we call it financial capability, but what it really means is we'll sit with you and help you budget. We'll help you look at what your options are. We'll help you understand what does 0% finance mean? What does 20% APR mean? Look, me and you, I'm dealing with it every day, so I have a sort of a knowledge of it. But the man in the street doesn't have a knowledge, and they're just going along.
And it's lovely. Your honesty is lovely. I have a sort of a knowledge of it.
Yes.
The fine-tuning, you need to go and check maybe.
Yeah.
Right? So what about the poor man on the street or the woman in the street?
Yeah,
it's difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult for them. So yes, I'm optimistic that I think we'll get there. But there's things coming down the line, I think, that it's going to make it very difficult for people.
And you do need some partners. You do need the political representatives to be working close with you.
I'm lucky in this area, I have to say. Newry and Mourne District Council, both the officials and the councillors, are very, very good. They're very supportive of Citizens Advice, and they do have a good knowledge and understanding of what we do. Our MLAs are the same, and I'm lucky in that area, and I talk with them regularly, and they talk to me. So we try, because I would say CAB have the fingers on the pulse of what's happening in the community. So we try to make sure that our elected representatives are aware of what's happening on the ground.
How do people contact you?
They can call into our offices in Ballybot House. Any morning.
Through the door, knock the
just come on ahead
reception.
in any time from 9:30 to 12:30, or 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock any day. And we have outreach clinics in Crossmaglen, Mullabon, Bessbrook, Wernpoint and Kilkeel, because we understand sometimes it's difficult for people to travel. The transport not's good, and the cost of it's difficult. So they can pop into one of our outreach clinics and then speak to an advisor face to face.
Okay, and how do they find those clinics?
If you go onto our website, www.newrycab.co.uk,
CAB, newrycab.co.uk,
or contact our office on 3026 2934, and we'll be able to advise you where's the best place to go.
Tell them that number again.
It's 02830 262934, and bear with us because we're kind of very busy, but we will get to answer your call.
Listen, thank you for coming in, and people can be very reassured to know that Citizens Advice Bureau are out there working for you, and the door is open and the welcome is constant. Thank you very much indeed, Rose.
Thank you, Rowan. That's no problem.